Sehr verehrter Herr Bundesminister, lieber Frank Steinmeier,
Federal Minister of Foreign Affairs, dear Frank-Walter Steinmeier, Excellencies, Ambassadors,
meine sehr verehrten Herren Staatssekretäre,
Undersecretaries,
sehr verehrte Damen und Herren Abgeordnete,
members of the federal and of state parliaments, and first and foremost, dear laureates of our foundation this year. Ladies and gentlemen, I am delighted to be welcoming you personally and very cordially here at the Jewish Museum of Berlin for the 6th award ceremony of the Roland Berger Human Dignity Award. I extend my special gratitude, first of all, to you, Federal Minister of Foreign Affairs, dear Frank-Walter Steinmeier, for delivering this year's laudatory speech to this year's awards winners, and that subsequently, together with President Romano Prodi, you will confer the Roland Berger Human Dignity Award 2015 personally. At this point, I would also like to extend my thanks to you, dear President Romano Prodi, for your contributions to the Awards Committee, the president of which you are, and jointly with Minister Steinmeier, we will, subsequently to his laudatory speech, bestow the award on this year's laureates. I would also like to dedicate my thanks to the Jewish Museum with its new director, Professor Dr. Schäfer. Thank you for hosting us yet again tonight in this wonderful atmosphere of the glass atrium. Ladies and gentlemen, human dignity shall be inviolable. To respect and protect it shall be the duty of all state authority. But moreover, according to my most profound conviction, it's also a duty to all of us and to civil society as a whole. And it is precisely for this reason that Roland Berger Foundation tries to foster and promote human dignity in a threefold manner. First of all, by conferring the Roland Berger Human Dignity Award to persons and organizations who have committed themselves to human dignity and human rights on a global scale, as has been done by tonight's award winners in an exemplary fashion and will continue to do so. And secondly, by granting access to education and primary school to talented, gifted and motivated children and youngsters from socially disadvantaged families, thus allowing them to have a dignified life. More than 700 pupils are members and scholarship holders of the German National Scholarship Program. More than 100 have enrolled at university. And thirdly, we have supported unaccompanied refugee minors since the end of last year. In Bavaria alone, 4,000 of those refugee children arrived in 2014 after having spent several years on a life-threatening journey organized by irresponsible refugee smugglers. They seek refuge from war and violence, from being recruited as child soldiers, from sexual exploitation out of desperate hardship and poverty. They lost their parents. They were separated from them on their refugee journey or were sent to us on themselves by their parents looking for a future worth living. And these young people subject to legal protection granted to children and who must not be expelled are granted a new home over here. And we are providing them with the most essential thing to our mind, which is education, which makes for prospects for their future. As an independent youth welfare organization, we offer institutions to look after and educate them. First of all, in one federal state, and we hope to extend this further in the future. Ladies and gentlemen, Refugees. This is also the topic of the Roland Berger Human Dignity Award 2015. Flight and expulsion are undoubtedly one of the most pressing topics of our times. And according to the United Nations, more than 51 million people are currently seeking refuge. And for many of them, they are looking to reach destinations such as Europe and Germany. Over the past 2 weeks, we have witnessed more than 1,000 persons losing their lives in a most tragic way, trying to get to us. Footage and reports of the latest boats to sink are shocking and cannot leave any of us indifferent. Ladies and gentlemen, each and every refugee is first and foremost a human being, and as such, he or she is protected by Article 1 of our basic law, which stipulates the following. Human dignity shall be inviolable. To respect and protect it shall be the duty of all state authority. Our constitution refers to human beings regardless of the fact whether they are Germans, Syrians or Afghans, whether they come from Ukraine, from Yemen or from Eritrea. Their human dignity is inviolable. And this is something that many of our fellow countrymen should think of before they feel urged to making xenophobic statements or even carry out more than that. Every human being is precious. A human being enriching our society. But it goes without saying that as a refugee, they are in need of our support. And let me make 3 statements from a very personal point of view. First of all, I'd like to refer to Germany in this context. In absolute figures, Germany hosts the largest number of refugees. But when compared to its number of inhabitants, this is not quite the case. 826 refugees per 1 million inhabitants is what we have received since 2009 and 2013 on a yearly basis from so-called third states. Sweden hosted 4,000, Belgium 2,300, Austria 1,800, and France and the Netherlands 900 each. These figures go to show that we do a lot, but other EU countries outperform us in this respect, which does not mean, however, that Germany can host an infinite number of refugees. But we have the duty to display utmost solidarity and support. And as a consequence of demographic developments, we have a clear economic and societal interest in accepting persons and in being able to integrate them with everything that needs to be done to do so. Let me make a second statement, focusing on the European Union. The magnitude of refugee flows and of the hardship endured by refugees shows that we are faced with a global problem, but of course we're called upon particularly to act in rich countries. For us in the European Union, this means first and foremost that we need to adopt a joint, convincing and equitable European refugee policy. It is unacceptable that some EU countries refuse to receive refugees at all and leave a bigger burden for others to take. And yet it is unacceptable that people suffer or even die on their way towards us just because the EU cannot find an agreement. And one third remark, when it comes to countries of origin, part of the truth is that the refugee problem cannot be solved by the potential, even if rich, host countries and their integration readiness. The highly developed industrialized countries such as Germany and the European Union can and have to contribute to ensuring that human rights are being respected in the countries of origin and of transit, and that acceptable, decent conditions are put in place. And by way of that, it will be possible to offer a life in dignity, and people don't feel the need to flee in the first place. Accepting our contribution and support is the task of the countries of origin, and for them to establish a peaceful political system respectful of human dignity. Unfortunately, so far, they have mostly failed to do so. Ladies and gentlemen, the whole world needs to do more, but we as Europeans shouldn't wait for others to join in, but we should pool all our efforts to help in the face of this plight, and not least because it will be to our own benefit eventually. Ladies, gentlemen, 3 impressive and exemplary ways of committing oneself to protecting refugees and preventing the necessity to seek refuge are chosen by this year's laureates, and they do this in a sustainable, successful and long-standing fashion. And I am truly delighted to be introducing these persons to you tonight and to pay tribute to them. Our award committee, under the auspices of Romano Prodi, didn't have an easy task because they had to choose from more than 200 nominations that we have received from politicians, NGOs, human rights activists, individual persons coming from around the globe. So they had to choose these laureates from amongst them. And at the end of January, our award committee unanimously chose this year's laureates, and you will get to know them in a few minutes' time. But let me make one important remark before that. The Roland Berger Human Dignity Award does not only comprise an award ceremony like tonight's celebration and a project-related financial award that laureates will use for their human rights work, but Roland Berger Foundation also accompanies its laureates over many, many years and supports them in a continuous manner and in an active way in all their projects. And on behalf of the award winners of the past years, I'd like to illustrate to you how the laureates of the past 2 years are doing today and what they achieved with the help of the prize money. And I would like to familiarize you with their work. And to do so, we would like to watch a short documentary taking us on a journey to women's rights activists, to Asia, and our laureates from Tunisia, Egypt and Syria. And it's in this sense, ladies and gentlemen, that I would like to wish you a very inspiring evening. And let me thank you for your attention. Thank you.
A good 3 years have passed since the Tunisian revolution. Today we're free, but the problem of torture has not gone away.
We are in the worst situation for human rights since I used to work as a lawyer more than 25 years.
My husband has spent the past 3 years in a Syrian prison. They tortured him for the first 9 months.
The Arab Spring has not turned to summer. Hopes of freedom and democracy have been dashed. For the winners of the 2011 Roland Berger Human Dignity Award, what that means is that their courageous dedication to the cause of human rights has not got any easier, and is now more important than ever. How are the 2013 award winners getting on with their fight for women's rights in Asia?
Violence against women is no longer an issue that much silence is maintained over. The silence has been broken.
The international community has turned away from Afghanistan. We can feel that. We're afraid that progress in women's rights is going backwards and that the Taliban is regaining ground.
For the first time yesterday, the Prime Minister of Pakistan said there will be no good or bad Taliban. The reason he said it is because there were good and bad Taliban. I mean, it's like saying good terrorist and good killer and a bad killer.
When Asma Jahangir welcomed us in Pakistan last December to show us how she had used the award money, the country was mourning the 130 school children from Peshawar who had been brutally murdered by the Taliban the day before.
There was a funeral prayer for the departed souls of the martyred children, and there was this question brought up whether female lawyers should take part in the funeral or not, which normally doesn't happen. And then we were told, you can then go in the last row. And they said, no, we are in the first row. And we were in the first row. It was for the first time that it has happened in public. And would you imagine that out of fear, that footage was not shown on television? If you want to break Talibanization, you have to break the mentality of Talibanization. And this is one of the actions that is breaking mentalities.
Asma Jahangir's latest project also aims to change people's mindsets. She's using the prize money to establish a radio station for women. The radio station is scheduled to go on air in 2015, broadcasting nationwide for 3 hours a day. Illiterate women in rural areas of Pakistan are the main target audience. Many of them are not aware of their rights and have to submit to patriarchal traditions. Asma Jahangir donated another portion of the prize money to the Dastak Women's Shelter, which she co-founded herself many years ago.
I came here due to my husband's violence, and he is not a good man for me.
In this shelter home, there are women who are battered who have come. There are women whose lives are at risk that come there. Women who have been implicated in false criminal cases and need protection because their families are not helping them.
I am not a strong woman, but after came in a shelter, I got a lot of confidence.
Self-confidence and a voice. That is what Asma Jahangir gives many women in Pakistan and beyond. From Pakistan to India. Here too, women are now demanding their rights, loudly and self-confidently. Our award-winning organisation Jaggery has a lot to do.
The numbers of women survivors who come to us has increased by more than 30%. So to that extent, it is putting a lot of pressure on us.
To be able to help the growing number of women, Jaggery is using its prize money to build a new floor on top of its office. In the future, victims will be able to receive not only legal assistance, but also psychological and medical care. The women are especially proud of their latest project. Kalpana Viswanath introduces it to us.
We've developed an app called Safety Pin, which actually can do much wider set of audits since it is crowdsourced. So in the past 1 year in Delhi, for example, we have more than 6,000 audits. That's right. Security is minimal, no?
Moderate.
Women can use the app to locate themselves on the map and assess how safe it is in that part of the city. This evening, the women's rights campaigners are examining the safety situation at a very particular spot. This is the bus stop where a young student got on the bus exactly 2 years ago on December the 16th, 2012. Minutes later, she was brutally raped. She did not survive. Since then, December the 16th has been a day of remembrance for all women in India. Having assessed the safety situation along the bus route today, their conclusion is that many areas of Delhi remain dangerous for women at night, but measurable progress has been made. Cairo, 4 years on from the protests in Tahrir Square. Anyone expressing an opinion in Egypt is still living dangerously. Hundreds of members of the Muslim Brotherhood have been sentenced to death. Thousands of opposition activists are languishing in jail. The media has been censored. Gamal Aid and his team operate by far the most important Arabic language website on human rights issues. Only the websites run by Amnesty International and Human Rights Watch have more users around the world.
We have many time attack from government. We see that like logic result. You fight against the dictatorship, they will defamate you and maybe arrest you. But we are here, there is thousands and thousands of people. They will continue.
These children are hopefully going to take a stand for freedom and democracy one day. Gamal Aid has set up libraries for them in 5 slums in the capital, Cairo, because education should be available to all. Known as Dignity Libraries, the Roland Berger Human Dignity Award is what made them possible. Gamal Aid has even managed to bring his own award into being, the first ever for human rights activists in Egypt. It rewards the bravery of all those who stand up for human rights, even under the most difficult of circumstances. Compared with Egypt, the people of Tunisia can be proud of how far they've come in the past 4 years. But the incipient democracy is threatened by Islamic terrorism, and people are still being tortured, as Raja Nazraoui tells us.
The police force has not been reformed yet, and the justice system is still the same. Even if a prisoner is tortured to death, there are no consequences for the police officer who tortured him.
It's the immunity from prosecution that the police enjoy that many torture victims complain of when they come to Raja Nazraoui. Many of them come with photos documenting signs of the worst imaginable abuse.
Before I received support from the Roland Berger Foundation, I had nothing. No office, no team. I was working on my own. If I wanted to fax something, I had to go and use a public fax machine. I wasted a great deal of time doing that. And now, the difference is immense. I have a team, an address, a phone. Our work is much more powerful as a result.
Due to security concerns, we couldn't visit our award winners in Afghanistan and Syria recently. However, we are in constant touch with them and very pleased to see the successful projects of the Afghan Women's Network. Thanks to their campaigns, which were funded by the prize money, more women cast their vote in the recent elections in Afghanistan than ever before. Our Syrian award winner, Mazen Darwish, doesn't want to use the prize money until he's free. When that will be, nobody knows. But his fellow campaigners remain optimistic.
I don't think Mazen is lost in prison. The regime knows very well that he has a different status from many because he was one of the leading human rights activists in the country, and he is well known everywhere in the world. So hope is not gone yet.
Hope of a future in which human rights are respected. That is what unites all of our award winners. Under very difficult conditions, these extraordinary people have shown courage and achieved great things. The Roland Berger Foundation is proud of them. Our support continues.
Maybe one more addition on Mazen Darwish. That is the last award winner that you could see, the detained one. His wife regularly reports to us how he is. For more than 3 years now, he is detained in prison. Those who were present with us in 2011 could still witness him. He was not allowed to travel from Syria, but he was connected with us via Skype. So in the 3 years that he's been detained, 21 times he's been summoned to appear in court. And this, of course, out of prison. But for those 21 hearings, these hearings were about terrorist activities, and yesterday there was another hearing that was scheduled, but all of a sudden this was postponed again. So this is what I would call mental or psychological torture. So Roland Berger Foundation will stay in touch and will keep you informed. We're very happy that one award winner, you could also see in the film, could come here today from Egypt, from Cairo, Gamal Aid. Thank you very much for being here. May I ask you 1 or 2 questions? I'll just like to sit down. In the film, you just said, if we were arrested, there are thousands who will then continue our work. But you are one of the last human rights activists that are still in Cairo. Most of the people have left the country. So what is the risk when you return that you will be arrested?
Actually, I'm always optimistic. Till the revolution of 2011, we were thinking the movement for human rights is only like 5 or 6 organizations. Now we are talking about real movement. It doesn't matter if they are organization or not, but now we believe with the whole attack and siege, we have supporters in the street. People know what the human rights organization are doing, and freedom has a price. You have to pay for it.
Ladies and gentlemen, a big applause for Gamal Aid. He's returning to Cairo, and he does not know what he can expect there. Let me come back to the awards for today. From Syria, from Iraq, from Niger, from Nigeria, from Mali, from Gambia, from so many African countries, they come in their tens of thousands, and they come here, ladies and gentlemen. Europe is the promised land, freedom, democracy, human rights, human dignity, the rule of law. What does that mean for us? It means, on the one hand, that human dignity needs to be respected and the refugee flows need to be controlled in one way or the other. This is what we would like to discuss. We have 5 people, we have 30 minutes. I would like to ask up here on stage, I'm very happy to be able to welcome you here all in alphabetic order. The member of the Editor's Department-in-Chief of the Stern and Hans-Ulrich Jürges, who is also a special advisor to the publishing house of Grenadier. So please sit down. The representative of the UNHCR in Germany, Hans Tenfeld. Thank you for being here. Maybe you can have a seat over here. The former EU Commission President and Italian Mr. President is Romano Prodi. Thank you. And the Chairman of the Board of the Federal Employment Agency, Frank-Jürgen Weiser. Thank you very much. Our topic, of course, is the respect of human rights. To start with, I would like to know from you all, looking at this from this angle, please assess the EU Special Summit of last week. And because this is a very emotional award ceremony, you can also express your emotions. The summit and the outcomes or the approaches it has brought about, is this worth something? Maybe we can start with Romano Prodi. He's an Italian, he is the former Italian Minister President, he is the former EU Commission President. The outcomes of the summit, are you happy with them?
No. Not so happy because, well, there were some points to solve. First one, the easiest one was to increase the money for the rescue. This was done. But I have not seen a long-term view on the problem. You know, the clear fact that we have not yet in our mind that this will be eternal if we don't take some brave decision. Let's say if you go to the sub-Saharan areas, you see, I had a meeting with the president of Niger. He told simply me, look, now our population will double in 19 years, not anymore in 22, 23 years, because the rate of birth is very high and the infantile mortality is a little slower. And so where do our people will go? They have no choice. They will push to Europe. It was very clear. This is the same thing that happens in any sub-Saharan country. Second, the biggest flow in this moment is from, let's say, wars and tensions, Syria, Horn of Africa, all this area. And of course, this could be end sometimes, but we have no signal now. You know, so we are taking the problem as an emergency problem. It's not an emergency problem. It's a new wave of the human life. And this is, we have to tackle it with immense, let's say, political and financial means. We have to work in the countries in which they are, and even more, we have to control from the last country they come, that is Libya. This is the second problem. It's an emergency, but is an emergency that is not yet under solution in this moment. You know that before the Libyan war, you know, we had the same problem. I had so many, let's say, relation with Gaddafi, you know, continuous, you know. He was always menacing. Whenever there was a problem, he was always menacing to send me immigrants, you know, to send me people. But in the end, we could have some agreement, you know. There was a counterpart. Now, there is nothing. Now, there is a tragedy of a state in which you have two governments, 16 armies or more, and an immense number of tribes in power in the local areas. And, you know, other states influencing in Libya. And so we must, I say we must push, we make pressure on all international community to, let's say, to push, to have influence on the states that are around Libya to oblige to have, let's say, a meeting, to have some sort of negotiation. Otherwise, the problem will never be solved. Neither the long-term problem nor the, say, Libyan tragedy.
The EU Special Summit, of course, these are major problems, many major issues that you addressed, for instance, the countries of origin, and also taking into account Libya, trying to come to terms with the situation there, and also intensify sea rescue efforts. The summit for you, your emotional analysis of it. From my perspective, from our perspective, it is a very important first step that was taken there. It was clear that stopping Mare Nostrum, the Italian rescue action of the Italian Navy, that stopping it was a mistake, and this has now been understood. And luckily, the European states have now taken the first step together in order to take care of this situation. Hopefully, we will have to see how this new operation will take effect, but hopefully more people will be rescued when they are in distress at sea. The money is now made available, the same amount that Italy spent for Mare Nostrum, and this is a first step. Many different steps have been announced, and measures have been announced, and we now need to make sure that this is now efficiently implemented. So I'm hearing some words of hope here, Mr. Weiser. Yes, of course, I always have to be hopeful. In my role, I experience the expectations that are made towards politicians and the hopes that are voiced. And on the other hand, it is so difficult to overcome the differences in cultures, in attitudes across Europe. And measured against this yardstick, or putting this into this context, I'm pretty satisfied. The topic has been identified, it is clearly defined, and now policymakers need to find good solutions. Mr. Jürgens, yes, politics always has to be on the border between power and ethics. And in the European political arena, they decided for power for domestic policy reasons. So we should not have any illusions about the freedom of maneuver that policymakers have on a daily basis, but a minimum can be expected, and the minimum was not achieved. The minimum is that we should do everything in order to rescue Mediterranean refugees, and 3 million have now been topped up to be 9 million. This is ridiculous. The European ships are not in front of the African coasts, they are in front of the European coasts, and they're only picking those out of sea that have managed to reach the European coasts before their ships went shipwreck, and no key agreements were put together. There are some European countries that are stubborn. Other European countries are more committed than others when it comes to integrating and accepting refugees. And in European domestic policy, this has not been discussed. Article 1 was quoted by Roland Berger that human dignity is inviolable. This is what our basic law says. Let's look at what happens to refugees that have arrived in Germany. Can we make sure that they are safe? I think we should talk about this later on. I can only say in Germany they are not safe. Their safety is not guaranteed. So, mid-May, the EU Commission has announced the EU migration agenda of Avramopoulos, the commissioner in charge. One aspect of this is legal immigration, legal entry of refugees from so-called third countries. What could this look like? Because this would then take away some pressure, I think, when it comes to escaping countries via the Mediterranean. A few aspects of the agenda have already been published. Could you comment on this, please? Well, the way it could look like would be the following. We said we need to find legal ways so that the refugees do not have to seek refuge with people smugglers. And Germany has already given a very important example through the humanitarian program. We have 130,000 places. We have do you mean quotas in Germany? Yes, places in Germany, but we asked all countries to make their contribution, and Germany has declared that it is going to make available 30,000 out of 130,000 that we asked for. And they also said in Germany that we need to find more solutions, for instance, bringing families back together and also issuing humanitarian visas. Yes, may I ask you both what you think about this? Also, Mr. Jürgens, in the so-called migration agenda, there was another topic, namely setting up information centers in the countries of origin, or asylum verification centers in Tunisia or Morocco, or maybe in the refugee camps in Syria, maybe have asylum inspection or application inspection agencies so that those that travel can travel legally. Do you think that this is a realistic approach or a realistic way of channeling the refugee flows? Well, this is something that is being discussed for a long time, but nothing has been done for this. I think it is worth a try, but I fear that this will not help us. Whoever goes there goes with the fear that they will be deterred. They do not want to queue in front of such a center. First of all, there would have to be some trust that needs to be created, that the reasons for seeking asylum are taken seriously, and that it is not the purpose of those centers to keep asylum seekers away from the countries. This is a proposal that was made by Germany, but within the European political arena, nothing has happened. And I think it's not foreseeable. Mr. Prodi, what do you think?
Well, this can tackle some minor aspect of this, clearly, but the problem is that people are afraid they fly away, you know. They are not people who fill a form in order to emigrate regularly. They are persecuted or they are really out of any hope. So clearly it's very important that we create the condition from the states which they fly. But this we can do where the immigrants, they fly for economic reasons. When they fly from the war areas, clearly they simply escape.
But was tun wir mit Wirtschaftsflüchtlingen?
But what can we do with people who leave the country for economic reasons? Mr. Renzi just suggested that we should try, and this brings us back to the people smugglers, to the human traffickers. So maybe that we should try to destroy the empty smuggling boats in front of the Libyan coast. And you know, we have the mobile phone numbers of those people smugglers. We know who they are, so maybe try to prosecute them. Do you think this is a realistic hope in order to keep refugees away?
Well, I asked to all the possible experts. No one told me how you can hit empty boats, because they fit the boats in order that you cannot hit them. The first thing is to fill the boats of people. And then, what do you do? This is the problem.
Doch Ablenkungsdiskussionen. Woran will man ein Schiff ansehen?
Yeah, sure. How do you know that this is a smuggler's boat if it is empty on the beach? How can you destroy this? Well, maybe the intelligence services know this. Well, and a robust mandate for this. European soldiers, should they be at the Libyan coast? Should they be armed and shoot at the boats? Question mark. And then should this be done with the consent of the Libyan government? Who is the Libyan government? So there are thousands of questions, and one question has been answered. I think this is an illusion, and I think this is a false discussion. This is a discussion which is now focusing public attention to people smugglers, and it's so difficult to act just in order to distract people from the fact that we don't have any refugee policies in place. So if the centers were in Africa, these would be European centers, and then the asylum seekers would have to be distributed to Europe, and in Europe there is no program for distributing those refugees, and I don't think this exists in the long run. I think that the professional, critical perspective of the journalist should not be contradicted, but I would like to add something to this. Let me look at Germany and what has changed here. We are willing, for economic reasons, but also out of inner conviction, to accept people from Europe, and they can freely move within Europe for seeking jobs. And we are also willing to accept people from third countries. So I think this is a very good development. 70 years after a disaster, we are gathered here today, and we can talk about this wonderful prize awarded by Roland Berger. This is something we need to be thankful for. Yes, of course, you are right. This is a reality as well, but my reality is also a reality. Yes, if I may answer.
Yes, your reality is mine as well, but it is just part of reality. In the first 2 months of this year in Germany, we had 445 attacks out of xenophobia. This was counted by the ministry, 445, and 9 detentions. And you can realize that something is not right here, because people are attacked because they look different in the street, and homes of asylum seekers are attacked. And obviously, our security forces fail here massively. We discussed about the attacks on the refugee asylum seekers' home of Tröglis, this small town of Saxony-Anhalt. Before, there were people living in that home, and weeks before, the mayor had to step down because of right-wing protests. There were weeks of right-wing protests taking place in that very place, and in the night when the house was burnt down, it was not watched. There was no police officer watching it in front of the door. How is this possible? And we find such events all over the place in Germany. You're right. We have never had so many people in Germany looking after asylum seekers and refugees, accompanying them and welcoming them. But we have a serious amount of persons that are ready to act violently, and refugees are not sufficiently protected. Let me get back to this topic, Mr. Feld. Let me get back to the topic of how we can legally pilot refugee flows and what we can do here, please. Well, I was just going to add something from my point of view. I mean, there is this big readiness amongst the German civil society to actually support refugees, to welcome refugees. And I think that Europe can actually take Germany as a role model here. This readiness to accept people in other European countries is what is lacking. And Germany and Sweden receive the largest numbers of refugees. You mentioned that. And there are smaller countries such as Malta, Luxembourg, Switzerland, Sweden, yet again, that accept the largest numbers of refugees per capita. But many European countries are not yet ready to really receive refugees, and we have to work towards that. And the Council of last week was hopefully the first step to do so. And Lampedusa 2013 was something that was almost forgotten, and now it takes another tragedy, obviously, to raise awareness at the highest level of the European Union. The first step was made here. So at the end of the day, I think hope remains, but the readiness is something that I can perceive in Germany even 20 years on after I came back to Germany. I worked here for the UNHCR from 1989 to 1994, and I came back in 93, and there was a big change happening in Germany, and still we have to keep up this work for things to stay like that, and for the things that you describe not to become a general problem. But my perception is that there is readiness to receive these refugees, and we've got amendment of the Asylum Act, but we are going to get to that. But finally, I'd like to ask another thing. Of course, we have to take seriously the fears of persons in Europe, i.e. that there are uncontrolled, huge refugee flows coming in, 500,000 alone to Germany. So we need a joint European refugee policy, which maybe is brought about soon. But this joint refugee policy, if it links up with the EU migration agenda, and because it's necessary, I mean, couldn't it just take the fear away from people if people are aware of the fact of how they can deal with those persons that need to come, and how can they be distributed with a reasonable key, and not just Italy and Malta and Greece?
Well, look, I have no knowledge to enter into the German problems, but I have to be very clear that if the flows is increasing in such a way, the political and sociological resistance will be impossible to tackle in any country of Europe, you know. So this is why I'm urging on the Libyan problem, because you can manage things when you have not this flow pushed by criminal interests that is increasing day by day. And so I think that a European effort could help, but even a European effort cannot solve the problem if we don't go to the roots of it. You know, not even Germany, not even Sweden, not even no European countries. Looking inside Europe, clearly now the immigration problem has become a problem of internal policy. And so you will, in the moment we are living now, you will never have a common European migration policy, because this is clear, you know. For understandable, well, I don't like the word understandable, you know, but, you know, the night in which Europe has taken the decision for understandable reason, immediately Mr. Cameron told, look, we shall help with the ships and we bring them to Italy. Right? And it was, you know, because of election of the next week. And in this situation, to try to find a common European policy is a nice effort. We are here in an assembly that, you know, we must feel ourselves good, but is in this moment impossible.
It's a nice dream, you say. Sie wollten sich dazu.
Wir brauchen, glaube ich, in Deutschland,
You're going to say something on that? Yes, I think we can get things going if we have an immigration act to take away the fear from the people that policymakers just leave the problem alone. So you have to really convince people that policymakers are taking control of things, and then policymakers have to get used to doing something that they avoided so far, saying to people, telling people that we want to be an immigration country and that we need immigration for economic reasons, and how many immigrants we need and where they should come from and with what qualifications they should come over here. And we need to address this openly, and they shouldn't just withdraw to former legal positions. The so-called Immigration Act that is valid now has in its title the limitation of immigration, but we would like to consider immigration to be something offensive, and we have to get used to talking about figures in public as well and arguing about them, because argument is sometimes dreadful. Yeah. This is how you are called upon, Mr. Weise. The current legislation has actually evolved to the positive. How do you comment on that? Yes, we've seen encouraging signs. I mean, we make an effort to enhance free movement of workers on the job market, which means that persons can come from Eastern European countries, and we recognize that on average they are better trained than those that we have over here, the jobless people that we have over here. And the second encouraging sign is that we clearly define that we need people coming from all the states around the world, but it is right to say that this is always linked up with prospect on the labour market, because otherwise failing integration is just a pretext to exclude other persons. And thanks to the favourable political framework, Mr. Steinmeier is in charge of that, we have the possibility to actually integrate refugees, seekers and asylum seekers into the labour market after 3 months' time only, because we've got a well-functioning labour market. How does that work at present? Well, together with our sister agency, the Federal Office for Refugees and Migration in Nuremberg, we make an effort to welcome people, and I underline the word welcoming people here, quite deliberately so, and we establish where those people come from and what talents they have, and then we offer a proposal to them to first and foremost learn German language, and second we describe what they're skilled at, and secondly we tell employers that an export-oriented nation living off exports sees it as a benefit to receive persons coming from other countries. And we've got 9 pilot projects that are ongoing at the moment, and I hope that policymakers have received this benevolently and that this is becoming a standard sometime soon, and when compared to other European countries, this is quite good. You mentioned that we should actually confess to seeing that more and more people will come than ever before. Will we be able to tackle this with the effort we're currently making? Well, at the moment, yes, we will, but just as things are in life, it always depends. If more and more people coming, we won't be prepared to receiving all of them. So we would have to join in a mutual effort to pilot things and manage things. Otherwise, there will be too much of a burden on the labour market, on our population. We will create competition between jobless persons and immigrants, and this would then be something that becomes dangerous. But I think this is something that's imminent. Do you have an idea what you could contribute to the discussion so as to respond to large numbers of immigrants and welcome them? Yes, we've reached our limits of the burden we can take, and tomorrow I will introduce and present some other nice figures on the labour market yet again. And one nice thing is that jobs create jobs, so there's no limits to it. Whenever people come to us that are entrepreneurs and that want to do something, this would create jobs, but we would have to have the right yardstick here. So no specific answer here. What do you like to see? What kind of an immigration country is Germany supposed to be? An open-minded immigration country. Oh, in what way should we change? Let me put that differently. Another important step that Germany took recently was to launch a resettlement program. There was a pilot program for 3 years. Every year, 300 refugees were invited to Germany from third countries, mind you. Yeah, third countries where they could no longer stay for some reasons. And now, with the beginning of this year, this was increased to 500. So did they receive training in their home countries? Well, for us, training is not what's most important, but for us, the need to be protected is the most essential point. So here you're different from Mr. Weiser to some extent, because this is mostly about integration into the labor market. But these resettlement programs, maybe you can explain to us rapidly whether they are successful or what impact they have. Well, of course, there are European countries, such as the Scandinavian countries, that have implemented this successfully and that accepted several hundreds of refugees every year successfully, and they also said they would stop the program at a certain point in time. So, on the one hand, this is a sign of solidarity, but what is happening there during those resettlement programs? People arrive in Germany, they get language tuition, right? Yes, and they are granted the right to work very swiftly so, and they receive support by the authorities and by volunteers, by NGOs. And you would like to see more of that, wouldn't you? Yes, of course. At the moment, every year, 5,000 places for refugees are offered in the framework of this resettlement program in Europe, and our modest ideal is that by 2020, Europe is supposed to receive, including Germany, 20,000 refugees every year. And when compared to the United States of America, a traditional immigration country, they receive 70,000 to 80,000 refugees every year in the framework of this program. So, to my mind, there's no doubt about the fact that Europe can easily receive 20,000 a year. You mean Germany? No, Europe. Europe. Of course, including Germany can receive more than 500 a year. I'm deeply convinced of that. Well, please give us a brief answer. What type of an immigration country are we supposed to be? You said, well, we should first have immigration legislation. He would agree to disagree. What else? Well, quite bluntly speaking, without formulating a political program, well, the way I live here in Berlin, this is how the whole of Germany should look. And I think Berlin is a brilliant place for integrating people, and I live in a neighborhood where almost half of the inhabitants are of non-German origin, and it works nicely over here. This is precisely what you describe when it comes to progress, and you describe it quite rightly so. And I think we would have to extend this to the whole territory of Germany. I think there's a great deal of work to do. And if you're asking me what the country should look like, it starts with Article 1, quoted by Roland Berger. Human dignity shall be inviolable, and there's a lot to do. There are regions where dignity of refugees and asylum seekers is not protected. This is the basis on which we can live. Last question to Mr. Prodi. It would lead us to a next point on the agenda. As we know this urging problem of refugee flows from Syria, what do you think of human corridors for Syrian refugees? So basically, it's about transiting these people to Europe. So at the moment, it's 1.6 million who are in camps in Iraq and in other countries of the Middle East.
Well, if you mean for human corridor to help them and to assist them, I think that we have to do it. But I don't think that will be easy to organize this flow, because we'll be absolutely undetermined, So it will be a huge problem in which the agreement to organize it will be very, very, very difficult. As I told before, Syria is a case very similar to the other case we had. We have now, look, our attention will be to tell to the great powers, that push to the countries in which they have influence, Egypt, Turkey, Saudi Arabia, Gulf country, Qatar, to have influence in order to let's say, have an interval, have peace in negotiation in Libya in order to stop all the flow. This is the most urgent need that we have now.
Ich fasse zusammen, es gibt Riesenprobleme, aber es gibt
I summarize now. There are huge problems, but there are the first steps that are being made, and there is hope that we will see the adoption of a joint European refugee policy, but in reality it is not yet quite here. In Germany, many things are going on that work well. We have reached our limits, but we still have to step up our efforts. I'd like to thank you most cordially for having shared this information with us. We have discussed a lot and we have learned a lot. Thank you so much.
Ich habe Herrn Prodi ja eben schon gesagt, dass ich die
I
letzte
just
Frage an
told
ihn als
Mr. Prodi
Überleitung
that
zum
this
nächsten
last question would be a good
Programmpunkt
transition
nutze.
to the
Es geht
next point
das
on our
Thema
agenda.
Syrien.
It
4
is about
Millionen Menschen
Syria.
sind
4 million
geflohen seit Beginn des
people
Bürgerkrieges.
have
3
left the country since the beginning of
Millionen
the
alleine
civil
im
war,
letzten Jahr.
3 million
Deutschland hat
last year
über
alone.
Kontingent 30.000
Germany, by way of its
allein im letzten
contingent,
Jahr. Davon
received
sind
30,000.
etliche in einem
And last year,
Franziskanerkloster
many of them
untergekommen,
were
im
hosted
wunderbaren
in a Franciscan
Augustbeuren
monastery in Augustbeuren in
Und dort hat
Baden-Württemberg.
sozusagen
And this
eine
is where
Opernsängerin auf
an
sie
opera
gewartet
singer
und hat
waited
gemeinsam
for them, so to
mit
speak,
Bürgern der
and
Region,
together with citizens coming from the region,
Profimusikern,
professional musicians.
heißt sie,
Well,
den
the lady
syrischen
is called Cornelia
Flüchtlingschor
Lanz. She
gegründet.
founded the Syrian
Der ist
Refugee
jetzt in ganz
Choir,
Deutschland
which
unterwegs mit
is now
Auftritten,
touring
sehr
all of
erfolgreich,
Germany
auch
and
im
is very
Fernsehen.
successful,
Und Sie
performing
erleben jetzt 16
in concert
von ihnen.
and on TV, and you will now see
Der Name des
16
Chors
of those
ist
singers.
Zuflucht
The name
und
of the choir
der Titel,
is
den Sie jetzt hören,
Refuge,
ist Jana,
and the title
Jana.
you will hear
Vielen
is
Dank.
Janan Janan. Thank you so much.
أنا اسمي حذيفة الرحمون من سوريا من حما.
Ich bin Huzaifa al-Rahmoun aus
I
Syrien.
am Huzaifa
aus
al-Rahmoun
Hama.
from Syria, from Hama.
عشت سنتين بلبنان مع أهلي وبعدين أنا هلأ هون مع أهلي بألمانيا.
Ich war 2 Jahre auf der Flucht im Libanon und bin jetzt
I
mit
was a
meiner
refugee in
großen
Lebanon
Familie
for 2 years, and now I am with my big family in
عندنا
Germany.
رسالة صغيرة بنحب نوجهها لكل العالم.
Danke, Deutsche, dass ihr uns umarmt
Thank you,
und aufnehmt.
Germans, for
Wir haben eine
embracing
Botschaft
us and
für
for
die ganze
receiving
Welt.
us. We have a message to send out to the whole world.
بكفي دم.
Hört auf mit dem Krieg. Kein Blut mehr.
Stop the war. No more bloodshed.
نحن عندنا غنية اسمها جنة جنة بتحكي فيها سوريا. سوريا يعني الجنة.
Jannah heißt Paradies.
Jannah means
Unser Paradies
paradise.
Jannah
Our
erzählt von
paradise
den syrischen
song,
Städten, aus
Jannah,
denen wir
tells the
kommen,
story of the
wie
Syrian
Damaskus,
cities we come from,
Hama,
like Damascus,
Aleppo,
Hama, Aleppo, Homs,
die jetzt alle dem Erdboden gleichgemacht
that
sind.
have been burnt to
Hat im
ashes.
Flüchtlingsheim in
Huzaifa
Augustbeuren Texte darüber geschrieben, ein
wrote the
Gedichtband,
lyrics
ein Roman,
and
in dem seine
poets about
Geschichte
it in his
verarbeitet.
refugee
Sprechen Sie ihn darauf
home, and in which he deals with his
وقفوا
experience. Please talk to him about it.
بكفي دم. شكرا دويتشلاند. شكرا على كل شيء.
Bitte Deutsche, bewahrt euren
Please,
Frieden.
this goes out to all the Germans, please keep your peace.
جنة 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 سوريا يا وطننا يا وطننا يا وطن يا حبيب يا ابو تراب الطيب حتى نارك حتى نارك حتى نارك الجنة
جنة 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 سوريا يا وطننا جنة 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 سوريا يا وطننا يا وطن يا حبيب يا ابو تراب الطيب يا وطن يا حبيب يا ابو تراب الطيب حتى نار الجنة حتى نار الجنة
بترابك ربينا ولا ترابك حنينا بترابك ربينا ولا ترابك حنينا وبمجدك علينا للقمة وصلنا للقمة وصلنا.
جنة 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 سوريا يا وطننا، جنة 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 سوريا يا وطننا، يا وطن يا حبيب يا بتراب الطيب، يا وطن يا حبيب يا بتراب الطيب، حتى نارك جنة حتى نارك جنة.
ثوري ثوري درعة بعتامي ما انتي شمعة، ثوري ثوري درعة بعتامي ما انتي شمعة، حمصية نادي الفزعة حمصية نادي الفزعة، يا مسند حملنا يا مسند حملنا.
جنة 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 سوريا يا وطننا، جنة 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 سوريا يا وطننا، يا وطن يا حبيب يا بتراب الطيب، يا وطن يا حبيب يا بتراب الطيب، حتى نارك جنة حتى نارك جنة.
حمص يما العروبة الخوف باس التوبة، حمص يما العروبة الخوف باس التوبة، لمن هاب الصعوبة لمن عرف الصعوبة، أبطال واسأل عنا حمصية واسأل عنا.
جنة 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 سوريا يا وطننا، جنة 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 سوريا يا وطننا، يا وطن يا حبيب يا بتراب الطيب، يا وطن يا حبيب يا بتراب الطيب، حتى نارك جنة حتى نارك جنة.
يا حما سامحينا والله حقك علينا، يا حما سامحينا والله حقك علينا، انت منا وإلينا انت منا وإلينا، بس جبارة منا حاشا الله يخازلنا.
جنة 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 سوريا يا وطننا، جنة 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 سوريا يا وطننا، يا وطن يا حبيب يا بتراب الطيب، يا وطن يا حبيب يا بتراب الطيب، حتى نارك جنة حتى نارك جنة.
جسر الشغور ورستن لحن الشهادة غنن، جسر الشغور ورستن لحن الشهادة غنن، مهما تقتل وتدفن تقتل أمام وتدفن، يا خسيس ارحل عنا يا خسيس ارحل عنا.
جنة 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 سوريا يا وطننا، جنة 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 سوريا يا وطننا، يا وطن يا حبيب يا بتراب الطيب، يا وطن يا حبيب يا بتراب الطيب، حتى نارك جنة حتى نارك جنة.
ادلب يا غصن الزيتون انت يا الخضر الحانون، ادلب يا غصن الزيتون انت يا الخضر الحانون، علينا والله ما بتهون علينا والله ما بتهون، يا ذكرى ليالينا يا ذكرى ليالينا.
جنة 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 سوريا يا وطننا، جنة 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 سوريا يا وطننا، يا وطن يا حبيب يا بتراب الطيب، يا وطن يا حبيب يا بتراب الطيب، حتى نارك جنة حتى نارك جنة.
شهيدينا الأمامات زغرد اللويا البنات، شهيدينا الأمامات زغرد اللويا البنات، خادمات وحوريات خادمات وحوريات، بإذن الله على الجنة بإذن الله على الجنة. جنة جنة جنة
سوريا يا وطننا، جنة 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 سوريا يا وطننا، يا وطن يا حبيب يا بتراب الطيب، يا وطن يا حبيب يا بتراب الطيب، حتى نارك جنة حتى نارك جنة. جنة 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 سوريا يا وطننا، جنة 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 سوريا يا وطننا، يا وطن يا حبيب يا بتراب الطيب، يا وطن يا حبيب يا بتراب الطيب، حتى نارك جنة حتى نارك جنة.
Thank you.
Dankeschön.
Thank you so much to the Syrian refugee choir and Cornelia Lanz. Please, Germans, keep your peace. And I think we have to live with this gift every day in a very conscious way, knowing how far off peace is in Syria. So it's our task to provide protection to victims and provide them life in dignity. Thank you to the Syrian refugee choir. Ladies and gentlemen, we're now moving on to the bestowment of the Roland Berger Human Dignity Award 2014-2015. And who are those admirable persons, those courageous persons that we confer the award to is something you're going to be told by the founder himself, Roland Berger. Please.
Meine Damen und Herren, ich freue mich.
Ladies and gentlemen, I'm delighted
zwei
and I'm pleased that I have the opportunity to introduce to you two outstanding and courageous women whom we chose for this year's Human Dignity Award. And a very extraordinary organization that has committed itself to ensuring that for some thousands of children in Africa there are conditions worth living. And this is where children can learn, can receive training and receive education, have a job, and they are looked after in a country in which this doesn't seem plausible. In the first place, we would like to pay tribute to Ms. Dr. Katrine Camilleri, the director of the Jesuit Refugee Service of Malta. Furthermore, we confer the award to Dr. Alganesc Fessaha from Eritrea, living in Italy as well. You founded the NGO Gandhi, which has dedicated itself to the rescue of several thousands of persons under very difficult conditions in the north of Africa on Sinai. And we will learn more about that from you. And thirdly, we would like to pay tribute to an organization called Petite Flamme, a small flame. In one of the poorest countries of the world, in Congo, this organization sees to it that 2,500 children every year receive food, shelter, education and training, and can lead their lives towards prospects for the future on the ground, and they thus don't feel the need to leave their country in the first place. These three organizations, Petite Flamme, represented by Ms. Dada Diambu, by Mr. Odan Makila, running the organization on the ground, but we'd also like to introduce to you the founder of this organization, Ms. Dr. Monika Wolf. And a very special person who has dedicated himself to this organization and earned a great merit. Former Admiral Mr. Bess, who motivated German troops successfully to support this organization with their personal remuneration. Warm welcome to you. Congratulations on this award. But before we hear the laudatory speech by our Minister of Foreign Affairs, I would like to show you a film, because we visited them on the ground in Ethiopia, in Congo, in Malta, and you will thus get to know these wonderful people in their daily work.
We are 4 days and 4 nights in the
Wir
first
waren
2
4
days
Tage
we
und 4
finished
Nächte
some
auf
food
See.
we have.
Nach 2 Tagen haben wir uns Brot und Wasser ausgesucht. 2 Tage haben wir nichts gegessen und getrunken. Als wir in Libyen aufgebrochen sind, sagten die Schmuggler, schaltet das
instead to reach to Mediterranean. They give us the numbers of the rescue Coast Guard in Italy and Malta. The Maltese rescue saved us. When we come to see the buildings, I was very, very happy. All of us, really. We are 125, all of us. We are very, very happy.
Here at Hay Wharf, where the rescue boats dock in Malta, Ahmed and the other refugees are safe now. But they are not free. Because young or old, frail or pregnant, every refugee who reaches Malta's shores is taken into detention. One of the first people the refugees encounter in detention is lawyer Dr. Katrine Camilleri.
From 2002, when Malta started receiving, let's say, relatively large numbers of asylum seekers by boat from Libya, our work shifted to detention. And today, JRS is the only organization that is regularly present in detention, and we provide information to people arriving in Malta by boat, information about the asylum procedure, about rights, about what to expect. And we also provide legal assistance and what we call psychosocial support.
Today, Katrine Camilleri is visiting Halfar Tent Village, one of Malta's so-called open camps. Refugees find accommodation here after being released from the detention centres. The camp is very remote, down at the southeast corner of the island. Until recently, there were 500 refugees living here in tents. Now the tents have been replaced with porta cabins. Lucky from Somalia shares one of the porta cabins with 3 other women. Thanks to the legal assistance she received from Katrine Camilleri, she can now move about freely in Malta, after 12 months in detention and a complicated asylum application. But life is not easy here, even as a recognized refugee.
I don't have the same rights as the people here. I live in a porter cabin. I have no means of accessing welfare benefits, and earning my own money is difficult. Most of the people in Malta are really friendly, and yes, they did save the lives of us refugees. But there are also people who don't want us here.
That is something that Katrine Camilleri has also experienced firsthand. In 2006, arsonists set fire to her car and her front door. Her family was trapped in the house.
I mean, nothing that I had been through in my life until then kind of compared, you know. So it doesn't leave you. The experience stays with you to some extent. And I always say that this experience has helped me to become more sensitive to refugees and to people who are very afraid.
Fear, sometimes anger at the degrading way they've been treated, and also hope for a better future here in Malta. Malta, together with the nearby Italian island of Lampedusa, is the destination for refugees who come over the so-called middle route from Africa to Europe. But there are also other ways. The western route to the Spanish enclaves of Ceuta and Melilla, and the eastern route to Libya or across Egypt's Sinai Desert. Here in the east of Africa, people are fleeing Eritrea's military dictatorship. The Tekeze River is where the fate of thousands of refugees is decided. On the right bank is Eritrea, dubbed the North Korea of Africa for its brutal human rights violations. Anyone who manages to cross the river without being shot dead by the border guards has made it to the safety of Ethiopia. There, they are registered by the United Nations Refugee Agency and taken to one of the nearby refugee camps, like Mai-Eni, where 50,000 refugees live. Dr. Alganesc Fessaha comes from Eritrea herself. Today, she's in Ethiopia helping refugees from her homeland. She cooks for 900 children every day with her NGO Gandhi. She also helps older people who are unlikely to leave the refugee camp. But her work focuses on freeing refugees who have been kidnapped by human traffickers while trying to make their way to the Mediterranean. Alganesc Fessaha's mobile phone number is circulating among them. For many, it's the last hope of salvation.
When they call you, they say, please save me, they are killing me, and they are crying and shouting a lot. So you get very, how you said, afraid also. And they said, how you try it, and you say, I will help you. I will say, I will save your life.
One such phone call came from Simon. He had travelled the eastern route and made it as far as the Sinai Desert. That's where he was kidnapped.
They broke my hand and they mutilated my ears and my legs because they wanted to get $30,000 in ransom money out of my family. Then they took me to a blood-smeared room and told me the blood was from people whose families didn't pay up. We killed them, took out their kidneys and sold them, they said.
Alganesc Fessaha has been able to rescue many hundreds of refugees over the years, most of them from torture chambers. She travels regularly to the Sinai and to Libya on this mission.
I asked to speak to the trafficker, and I said, please, give me time, I will pay you after 5 days or after 3 days, just give me time. It helped me, first, that these people, they will not be beaten at least for 5 days. And secondly, I can start or study the strategy how to help them to come out.
Alganesc Fessaha never ends up paying a ransom. She either manages to talk the traffickers into freeing at least some of the captives with the help of a friendly sheikh, or she sets off time and again herself and manages to free refugees when the guards aren't paying attention. Alganesc Fessaha meets with 2 women in the Ethiopian capital Addis Ababa. Milyon and Rahwa are 2 refugees she rescued last year. They are still deeply traumatized, and here in Ethiopia, they have no prospects.
I'm going to be setting off again soon in spite of everything. My children are in a refugee camp in Sudan. I haven't seen them since I was kidnapped.
No one knows how Milyon and Rahwa's stories will end. Alganesc Fessaha is going to continue to give the 2 women her support and assistance. Even further removed from Europe's affluence is the Democratic Republic of the Congo, the world's 2nd poorest country. 70% of the people here live on less than $1 a day. A childhood spent in the slums is the norm. Children who grow up on the streets do not learn to read or write. 1/4 of all children get something to eat only every 2 days. Petite Flamme is battling against this misery.
Petite Flamme is a social project that organizes schools for underprivileged children, slum children between the ages of 5 and 18.
Petite Flamme actually came into being by chance. The Christian Focolari movement had moved into an empty building in Kinshasa 20 years ago, and they were renovating it to get it ready to use for their pastoral work.
Suddenly, there was a big group of children gathered at the gate, and we sat there and we looked at our cooking pots and our plates, and we looked at the children. No one had it in them to send a child away who was asking for education and asking for food.
Now there are more than 2,200 children who come to school here. For each of them, the cooks at Petite Flamme prepare 1 high-protein hot meal a day, consisting of corn, soya and sugar. They eat it in the classroom at break time. Petite Flamme is a purely Congolese project today, but support continues to come from Europe, from people who pay €20 a month to sponsor a child. Some of the sponsors are former soldiers from the German armed forces who helped provide security for the first democratic elections in the Congo in 2006.
During this mission, right at the start, I wanted me and my soldiers to get involved in a social project to win over the hearts and minds of the local population. We visited the first school in Kinshasa. The moment we looked into the children's eyes, that was it. We were hooked.
Retired Admiral Henning Bess travels back to the Congo every 18 months or so. This time, he has some gifts for the family of a sponsored child with him, and he reads out a letter from Germany. Jean-Paul was one of the boys who had a German sponsor too. Today, he is a role model for the young students of Petite Flamme.
I've been to university, and now I'm an engineer, and I have no debts. All that is thanks to Petite Flamme. Yes, I do have friends who have gone to Europe. Whenever I talk to them, they are not doing well. They have nothing to eat. They have no job, not even any official papers. At least I am free here.
Und nun Würdigung von allerhöchster Stelle. Der Bundesaußenminister Frank-Walter Steinmeier. Dankeschön.
Foreign Affairs Frank-Walter Steinmeier. Thank you.
Meine sehr verehrten Damen und
Ladies
Herren,
and gentlemen, Romano Prodi, Ms. Berger, Mr. Roland Berger, and especially dear award winners.
Die Konjunkturen öffentlicher Aufmerksamkeit
Public attention has its ups and downs, and sometimes this is something we cannot foresee. And there are dense sequences of news on ISIS, Boko Haram, Syria, Iraq, Yemen, Russia, Ukraine. And this is only interrupted by the plane crash in the French Alps, the natural disasters in North America and Nepal, and then, as a matter of fact, the highlight of, or the low point rather, of a never-ending tragedy in the Mediterranean. Nearly 1,000 people a few days ago drowned in the Mediterranean in front of the Libyan coast, and we can only guess the misery of people who are in overcrowded boats that are completely not fit for traveling this journey. And the horrible moments of this shipwreck, the chanceless fight for survival at sea, is something which is unbearable as a concept. The entire global extent of flight and displacement then in one single moment seems to be present just like under a magnifying glass. And it is not only highlighting the humanitarian dimension of the disaster, but also the sheer number of unsolvable conflicts and emergencies that people are motivated by to come to Europe from Africa and elsewhere. And this seeming powerlessness on our side when it comes to these problems and the reasons for these problems, the reasons for the flight and displacement, and trying to master them. And when the public attention is then gaining in momentum, then at first sight, there are only three reactions that we can observe. The first one: many are just speechless, they don't know what to say, or they are just furious. Then there are others who want to excuse, they want to apologize for the failure of policymakers. And then again, there are others who believe that with a single stroke of a hand, with a single drop of the hat, they could just solve the problem and remove the root causes. I understand all three reactions, and I can honestly only say that I know all these three reactions from myself personally. But I think, and we all know this, that none of these reactions will really help us, because there are such close cycles of political decisions and news announcements, but this is never going to help us handle this disaster. And there is not the magic bullet, the one only correct solution, and complex responses are needed. But for this, we don't have the time, we don't have the patience, and the next wave of attention is already going elsewhere. And we can already guess where it's going to be, because it's looming on the horizon. Ladies and gentlemen, what I am saying is that news and images are information. They are indispensable as such. But political attention, our political attention, is also subject to cyclical movements. But human dignity is not a matter of cyclical ups or downs. And this is why, my dear award winners, what you achieve is of such precious value, because it is not driven by the cycles of political attention, by the limelight, but it is inspired tirelessly. It is continuous, it is constant, and you've been endeavoring this for many years. You, my dear award winners, know that every refugee has his or her own painful story to tell of the loss of home, of leaving behind his or her family, of saying goodbye to beloved friends, and often enough, as we heard this, of violence and abuse. And you hear these stories, you know these stories, you know these from your daily work, because you go directly to these people, to those that are in need. You visit people who arrive at the coasts of Europe in refugee boats, and you are assisting those refugees, as we saw this already in North Africa, that have already gone through horrible things, and that would have faced ever more horrible things, most probably. You just described this expressly, how much you were inspired by the willingness and the hope of these refugees, Miss Katrine Camilleri, by those refugees who seek the journey across Europe. But your perseverance and your decidedness, your colleagues of the Jesuit Refugee Service are assisting refugees that arrive in Malta, and you provide legal assistance to them. Hundreds of refugees were helped by you throughout the past years with your advice and your assistance. And also, as I heard, you were doing this even though cowardly attacks on your organization were what you had to face. But you were not intimidated. You continued your courageous work. So I would like to warmly congratulate you on your award.
The
Eritrean-Italian human rights activist Alganesc Fessaha is also directly going to those who are in need. Regularly, you, Ms. Fessaha, traveled to the Sinai Desert in order to free African refugees from the clutches of people smugglers. Human rights organizations paint a shocking picture of human trafficking in the Egyptian peninsula, of the cruel torture of refugees in order to blackmail ransom money from hostages' families. You, Ms. Fessaha, have been traveling the world for years, and you want to raise awareness for the fate of these refugees. You give them a voice, and we thank you for your hope-inspiring commitment. The third organization that we are honoring here today is aiming to create conditions where people do not become refugees. The project Petite Flamme in the Democratic Republic of the Congo is permitting hundreds of children to go to school. They come from the slums in Kinshasa. This was founded by the Christian Focolare movement, headed by the theologian Monica Maria Wolf, and it started out as an impressive school project around 20 years ago with 25 children in a former looted, vacant school building. And nowadays, Petite Flamme is running schools for 2,200 pupils in the slums of Kinshasa and its surroundings. To these children, you give access to the asset that is offering the greatest opportunities to them, namely education. You are giving them hope, hope for a better future, hope for a better future at home, in their home country. Dear Ms. Diambou, Ms. Wolf, Mr. Bess, I would like to congratulate you most warmly on this award. Ladies and gentlemen, all three award winners do truly accomplish work for human dignity, and this is why this award is so highly deserved by all three of them. But you, who know so well about the stories of these refugees, should also look to Brussels, should look to Berlin, and you're right to do this. You should ask policymakers, what are you doing? Are you only driven by media attention that is always following a disaster, and then you hold emergency meetings? Or do you actually have real answers? And the tragedy of 2 weeks ago is not the first tragedy of its kind, but it is just the sad low point of a series of disasters in the Mediterranean. And far too many have already lost their lives in these tragedies. So we do not have to discuss about having to do more in order to save human beings from drowning. Of course, we have to do much more. This is something that we owe to us and our European values, especially if we want to remain credible vis-à-vis to others. But the entire truth, ladies and gentlemen, is also another one. Easy answers to the global refugee drama, the tragedy that was also covered by this discussion behind me. There is no easy answer to this, not before and not after a tragedy, because the conflicts and the crises in Africa and in the Middle East are increasing. Sometimes the problem grows more rapidly than we can actually find responses. Just one number I would like to give you, ladies and gentlemen, for tonight. 11 million. 11 million people in a single country. So many people have lost their home because of the conflict. This is one number that explains or gives us an idea of the entire extent of flight and displacement. And it shows us that in the long term, we can only come to terms with the problem if we fight the root causes for flight. And this number also goes to show that it is very important to help people in acute emergency situations in Germany and also in Europe. But on the other hand, there is only one response that the refugees long for, and this is a safe home country that gives shelter and work and, as was said, a future to its people. This is what foreign policy is about. This is what my work is about. Unfortunately, I know many of the crises spots that were touched upon by myself and also by the panelists. I know them very well from my first term of office. That is already dating back a few years. And in many of these regions, even after many years, no peace has come about. But even so, even though we know about the fate of the refugees, we should not falter. We should not give up our attempts to create more concrete initiatives and find political solutions in this crisis-prone global region, be it in Libya, where the brutal dictatorship of Gaddafi was replaced after a military intervention, and it was replaced by chaos and the collapse of a political system. So there is no protection for the people there, but the country is now becoming the prow of smuggling gangs, or Syria and neighboring countries like Lebanon or Jordan. They nearly collapse because of the influx of refugees. The 800 million that Germany spent are not enough, of course, and the 100,000 refugees from Syria that were accepted in the meantime in Germany, again, are not enough compared to the horrible disaster. But I think it is clearly more than what many others in Europe were willing to give, albeit our so-called transformation partnerships in North Africa, so that young people in Tunisia, Morocco or Algeria have prospects for their livelihoods in their own countries, albeit the more equitable distribution in Europe. This was also something that was discussed in the panel discussion. Of course, it cannot be that 5 countries in Europe accept the majority of refugees. But we cannot order this. We have to convince people. And apparently we were not convincing enough vis-à-vis some countries in Europe that so far have refused to accept refugees. So having said this, I think that each and every one of these initiatives, of these possibilities, could fill a whole evening of a speech. But the bottom line is, and this might be a disappointment for some of you, the bottom line is none of these initiatives will bring about rapid success. Not in Libya, because what has happened cannot be reversed, and this is why we need to show some patience. And with the help of those that dare to go into the war area, we need to establish a new order that then again provides protection and shelter also to the refugees that are displaced in the country. And I would like to see more respect for those like Bernardino de Leon, who does this on a daily basis and who is trying to mediate between the different fronts and front lines in order to do what is possible and in order to convince those people that the 200 militias should turn in their weapons so that the two competing governments should give up their competition and try and create a common state and give a common future to this state. So towards the end of my speech, let me say, ladies and gentlemen, that mainly there are two things that I greatly admire in the award winners that we are honoring here today. But it's not only something I admire in the award winners, but I admire this in everyone who you are working with on a voluntary basis. I admire characteristics that sometimes can serve as a role model for us as politicians who shoulder responsibility. First of all, perseverance, because we know that it is not cyclical attention, but patience that is needed to solve problems. And secondly, of course, we need to be realists because of the daunting character of the challenge, and we need to be meek when it comes to have limited means. But still, you are always willing, and you're tirelessly willing to step by step improve the situation. And this, according to a motto of a tireless man, a great man, as I think, Willy Brandt, who said, you must accept the world the way it is, but you should not leave it that way. Thank you very much.
Herr Minister, wenn ich Sie gleich bitten darf, hier zu bleiben.
Minister, may I ask you to just stay here? And first of all, thank you very much on behalf of all of us.
Und wenn ich jetzt gleich, Mr. Prodi, would you please join us here on stage? Und auch Herr Professor Berger, wir möchten jetzt
and Professor Berger, please. We would now like to confer the Roland Berger Human Dignity Awards to these outstanding personalities. Let me ask you to come on stage.
From the Jesuit Refugee Service, Dr. Katrine Camilleri. From Eritrea, congratulations. The director of the NGO Gandhi, Dr. Alganesc Fessaha. And from the Democratic Republic of the Congo and from Germany, for Petite Flamme, co-director Mrs. Dada Diambu. Die Gründerin und langjährige Leiterin Frau Dr. Monika Maria Wolf und den
Founder and long-standing Director Dr. Monika Maria Wolf and former Admiral Dr. Henning Bess.
Bitte schön. Congratulations. Hello. Vielleicht, weil Sie so groß sind, ein bisschen weit. No, come here. So, Frau Camilleri, the first one who will get the prize. Here, please. Mr. Prodi, you will start. Mrs. Camilleri. Das ist Marion, die Preisüberreicherin.
This is Marion, who will actually hand the award to us. This is the big certificate.
This is for you.
Mrs. Fessaha, Professor Berger.
Professor Berger.
Please, this is only paper. No, the real thing is
Und der Minister, Herr Steinmeier. Petite Flamme, vielleicht kommen Sie nach vorne.
And Minister Steinmeier for Petite Flamme, please come here.
So, congratulations to you all. Die Hohen Herren haben ihre wichtige Aufgabe getan. Vielen herzlichen Dank.
Well, the gentlemen have actually lived up to their high responsibility. Thank you so much.
Nun kommen natürlich Dankesworte.
Now, of course, we are going to listen to some words of thanks, and it will be in the order of conferring the awards. Mrs. Camilleri.
Ladies and gentlemen, Excellencies, I'm truly grateful to the Roland Berger Foundation for the honor of having been selected as one of the recipients of the Human Dignity Award for this year. It's an honor I share with all of my colleagues at JRS Malta and with every member of the Jesuit Refugee Service worldwide. Because as a colleague and friend once told me many years ago, when one of us is honored, all of us are honored because we share the same mission: to accompany, serve, and defend refugees. JRS, the organization I have been a part of for almost 20 years, has a special charisma, that of accompanying refugees. We have a profound commitment to accompany people on at least part of their journey. It's not easy to accompany refugees because ultimately our work is a daily encounter with great suffering. Every day we meet people who have experienced war and violations of their rights in their country and in the countries through which they traveled. Contrary to what many think, the so-called Central Mediterranean route, the route between Libya and Italy, or Malta sometimes, is not only an irregular migration route. It's also, I would say, primarily an asylum route, because the majority of people entering Europe through that route are found to be in need of protection. The statistics for Malta show this very clearly, and I think it's true also for Italy. And it should come as no surprise, because the majority of people coming through this route are from countries which are torn apart by conflict and governed by very dictatorial regimes. Countries like Somalia, Eritrea, Syria, and now Libya. From our experience, the search for protection takes asylum seekers through countries where the protection and their human rights are anything but guaranteed. So people move on in their hope to find protection. Because at the end of the day, what people are looking for is not just survival. They're not just looking to stay alive until tomorrow. They're looking for a community where they can belong, where they can receive support, but where they can also give. They're looking for a place which they can call home. So they move on and they arrive in Europe. However, unfortunately, very often, it's not their need for protection which shapes the response to their arrival. Malta, but Malta's not alone, I think Malta is one of a number of EU member states that have adopted this approach, treats illegal migration primarily as a security issue. And the EU, too, over the years, has invested millions in border control, focusing on stemming the flow rather than on providing protection. So migrants are forced to use ever more dangerous routes to find protection, and every year thousands of men, women, and children die in their search for protection. I think for me, accompanying refugees in Malta, which is strategically located in the middle of the Mediterranean, has brought home in a very real way the harsh reality of death at Europe's borders. One incident remains in my mind. In October 2013, a boat carrying over 400 men, women, and children was shipwrecked off the coast of Lampedusa, and some of the survivors were brought to Malta. It's estimated that 260 people died in that shipwreck, and 60 to 100 of them were children. I think as long as I live, I will never forget the experience of witnessing all that pain and anguish. There was no one who had not lost someone. People lost their wives, their husbands, their children, their parents. Some parents lost all of their children. They watched them drown in front of their eyes, and they could do nothing about it. And for me, the tragedy of these deaths is compounded by the reality that it does not have to be like this. It is perfectly possible to put in place safe and legal ways for people to reach a place of safety where they can find protection. There are different ways: humanitarian visas, resettlement, broadening the rules on family reunification. But to do it, we have to be willing to do so. We have to be willing to take the risk. For those who survive and make it to Europe, the journey is not over, and the search for protection continues. And JRS meets people in detention, as you heard, from the moment of their arrival, and we accompany people throughout the asylum procedure and even beyond, whether they are rejected or whether they receive protection. Many times our work is an encounter with our own powerlessness, because much as we want to, there are so many things we cannot change. We do make a difference in individual cases, but sometimes the bigger picture seems like it doesn't change. But beyond all of this, I think it's true to say that our work is also a daily encounter with resilience, hope, faith, and courage in the people we serve. I am constantly astounded by their willingness to continue, to move on, to build a new life in spite of everything that they've been through. It's also an encounter with solidarity and support, sometimes from very unexpected places. This, for us, sustains us, as does the knowledge that we don't work alone. There are many other people, other NGOs, individuals who are committed to human rights and who show untiring courage in their refusal to carry on in spite of the obstacles. This award means a lot to us in JRS Malta because it's an affirmation of the work we do and of what we stand for, which I think can be very simply summed up in the phrase, something which one of our directors once said: people are more important. The award encourages us to continue to work together to ensure that asylum seekers arriving in Malta are treated with dignity and that all are truly accepted and respected. Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Camilleri. Dr. Fessaha.
Good evening, His Excellency, Foundation Berger. And I'm so happy and honored to have this award from a foundation who work on human rights and who take care of the human rights, and he make all the efforts. I'm so honored. And all of us, in the name of the refugees who are in Ethiopian refugee camp, in Sudan, wherever they are, Eritrean, I thank you very much, the Foundation Berger. We are an organization, an NGO called Gandhi. Gandhi is working with the refugees since 15 years. Work in Sudan, in Libya, in Sinai. And we have been passing 750 people from the torture of Sinai, from the hand of the trafficker, without paying any money in the desert of Sinai. With one person who is a Muslim, Salafit, Bedouin from Sinai, Sheikh Mohammed al-Bilal, who has been a great help for 4.5 years, rescuing our life. We saved many people from torture, from removing the organ. And we have been assisting these people after that also. And we heard such many horrible stories. We met also some people that they removed their kidney because they could not pay the ransom. We met many women that they have been raped so many times that they was under the shock, or they had children and they refused to accept the children also. So we take care of them, and to these people we hand over to UNHCR, which it take care on the resettlement base. The other people who are in the prison of Egyptian prison, who are arrested for illegal immigration, to that people also we rescue almost 4,200 people from the prison, women, children, men, and we take them with the agreement, with the help of the Ethiopian government. Although they are Eritrean, they give them the laissez-passer, and then we provide the ticket, and we take them to Ethiopia. Take them to Ethiopia, and then Ethiopian, they accept them, and they put them in the refugee camp. And then from the refugee camp, they can escape to Sudan, to try the other road to go to Libya also. And on the other hand, we have many children in the refugee camp. They are orphan or children who are of the women, destitute women or raped women in Sinai. So we give them psychological assistance, and we give food and shelter to these children. We see every day in our life the suffering, the torture of human being, the dignity of human being repressed. And when I heard that the European community, they are making a point, they are realizing all this immigration problem, and they forget what is behind of each person, what he passed through. I remember last 2013, when Lampedusa happened, I was there for 1 month. And the boat was sank at the 800 meter from the coast. Then Eritrean government, they said, they are not Eritrean. They are Somalian, they are Sudanese, but the 520, they are all Eritrean. And the 368, the one the dead, there was Eritrean. And when I heard that European Parliament, they want to give funds to the Eritrean government, then I feel very, very sad, because how can you sponsor, how can you give money to a dictator? Because we see every day in the boat there are majority Syrian, second number is Eritrean. They are not escaping from the country because to look for a job or to look for a better life. They didn't want to leave the house, but they are forced, because in Eritrea there is military service from 16 to 52, 16 years to 52. So it means that you are losing all your life. You cannot study, you cannot work, you cannot do anything. So this is, I make an appeal to the people who has the power or the power on talking about this problem, about rescuing the people, that don't make it only an emergency, something like an emergency, always. Because when they came in Lampedusa, Mr. Alfano, Mr. Letta, and Mr. Barroso, and Mastrom, they came, and they promised a lot of things. I was there. They promised that they will help the refugee in a different way, never it will happen like that, and all the story. And then Mare Nostrum was created, and it was a great help. But Italy was left alone. She cannot manage all the other situation. It happened that 2 weeks ago, one boat with 950 people sank. And inside this boat, there was 100 children and 300 women. So they left Mare Nostrum and they put Frontex, but that's the result. And now there is another option. They are saying they will help the refugee in any way, making a point. But I hope that it doesn't remain only on paper, that it has been like last time on 2030. Because the refugee they are expecting, if the point is to help the dictator just to solve the problem of a migrant coming to Europe, that's not the solution. So also there is the possibility to create this humanitarian corridor to save these people, trying to find a peaceful place where they can go and apply, because each refugee can pay his own ticket and he can afford to do it. And please, I make an appeal to the Minister for Foreign Affairs that please do it a long-term, a concrete work at the European level to help the refugee, not only as an emergency. Always it is emergency. We are there because there is an emergency, because a boat sank. We have to do something for that. We have to save human life. It's not only protecting the border, as some countries, they want to do it. So my appeal is to the European community and to the people who can do that job on the name of the refugee. I thank you if you do that work, and thank you very much for everything, and thank you for your solidarity, Mr. Berger, to the refugee, to the poor people in Africa, to the orphan and all that. Thank you very much for all your job. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Fessaha. Dada Diambu, Dr. Monika Maria Wolf, Henning-Bess.
Dr. Monika Maria Wolf, Henning-Bess.
Excellences, Mesdames, Mesdemoiselles, Messieurs.
Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen. The social organization Petite Flamme was founded in August 1996. It was initiated by the movement of the Focolare, and Petite Flamme had the objective to alleviate the problems of poverty in the Democratic Republic of Congo. We started from a very easy principle. Every child has the right to food, to healthcare and schooling.
Petite Flamme
offers to children education, human and Christian education. And it started with a school class of 25 children. Today, Petite Flamme has expanded and can now pride itself on 2,698 children in 2 kindergartens, 5 primary schools, 5 centres with catching up classes, and 1 centre for visually and hearing impaired children, and 3 centers for
Ces différentes
afternoon
écoles sont
education. And
implantées
these schools
jusque-là
are
dans la
now in
capitale de
different
Kinshasa
neighborhoods of the
et
capital
les
of
provinces du
Kinshasa, in the
Bas-Congo et du
provinces of
Bandundu.
Bas-Congo and Bandundu.
Mesdames, Mademoiselles, Messieurs,
Ladies, gentlemen,
l'œuvre sociale Petite Flamme a dû
establishing
consentir
the social
beaucoup
institution
d'efforts,
Petite Flamme
des sacrifices
required a great deal
et
of
d'amour
effort, a lot of
pour atteindre le niveau
sacrifice
que
and
nous
love
avons
in order to
aujourd'hui.
reach the level on which we work today.
La Fondation Roland
Roland
Berger
Berger
a eu un regard
Foundation
d'amour envers notre œuvre.
looked at our work with a great deal of
Cette petite
love,
flamme a
and
su
this
toucher le
little
corps de la
flame
Fondation
could touch the
Roland
heart,
Berger,
the very
qui
heart of
décerne
the Roland Berger
ces prestigieux
Foundation,
prix.
which has conferred this prestigious
C'est une
prize
fierté,
to us.
non seulement pour
We
nous, éducateurs,
are proud of that, not
mais
just
aussi pour
us
nos enfants,
educators, but it's
qui
also a
n'avaient
source
pas
of pride
d'espoir
for our
d'être
children
instruits,
that didn't have the
vu la
hope
pauvreté
of
et
enjoying
le manque
education
d'encadrement.
because they were poor and were not looked
C'est
after.
également une grande fierté
It is also
pour les mouvements de Focolare
something that fills
et
us
tous nos
with
partenaires
pride at
qui ne
Focolare
cessent
movement and
d'apporter
all
une
our
pierre
partners that
pour faire de nos enfants
support
des
us
adultes
continuously
responsables.
to create adult,
Nous pensons à nos
responsible adult
partenaires allemands,
persons. And I'm thinking of our partners in
Particulièrement à
Germany, in
Monika Maria
particular Monika Maria Wolf.
et à Madame et
And
Monsieur
I'm thinking
l'amiral
of
Bess.
Mr. Admiral Bess. A great big thanks to you.
Nous disons également un grand merci
And we would also
la
like to extend our
Fondation
gratitude to
Roland
the
Berger
Roland Berger Foundation
pour cette belle initiative
for this
qui est de
outstanding
primer
initiative
les organisations qui valorisent la personne
that
humaine.
confers this
Je
award
vous
to
remercie.
us helping persons to lead a life in dignity. Thank you so much.
Als ich von Südafrika kommend
When
in
I
Kongo gelandet bin,
Ended up in Congo,
habe ich
coming
mit
from
meinen
South
Brüdern und
Africa.
Schwestern
I talked to my brothers and
gelacht,
sisters,
gesungen,
and we
getanzt,
laughed, we danced, we
aber
sang,
auch über das
and we also
unsägliche
talked
Elend
about
der
the
Menschen geweint.
suffering and
Der
hardship
Bischof
that
von
people
Bukavu
endured, and we
im Osten
cried
unserer
about it.
Republik,
Bishop
nun
Bargo
sie hier war,
in the east of
im
our
selben Jahr
republic
meines Kommens wegen seines Einsatzes für die Wahrheit und der
was
Menschenwürde
award
ermordet,
was
sagte
murdered
einmal,
for his commitment to
es
human
gibt
dignity,
Dinge
and
in
he said
unserem
once in
Land,
his life that there
die
are
man
things in
nur
our
mit
country
verweinten Augen
that
sehen kann.
we can only observe with tears in
Und
our
so
eyes.
sahen wir
And this is
das
how
Leid und die
we
Verlassenheit vieler
looked
Kinder.
at the suffering and hardship and
Und
the
jene
isolation
Geste
of many
von
children.
Der Film sprach,
And the
als nach
gesture
einem harten Arbeitstag
that
des
the film
Entrümpelns
spoke
der
about when,
italienischen Schule,
on a
die
hard
nach
day
den
of work
großen Plünderungen
of
der Stadt Kinshasa
taking
verlassen
care
war,
of a looted and
Als wir das
vacant
Tor
school of
öffneten,
Kinshasa, when
unsere
we opened the
Mahlzeit von
gates
Reis und
to
Trockenerbsen,
offer
was
our
damals die
food of
Welthungerhilfe
rice
uns
and
geschenkt hatte,
dry peas
mit
offered
der
to us
zerlumpten
by
Kinderschar, die sich dort drängte, zu
Welthungerhilfe
teilen.
to the
Da hat niemand von
children
uns geahnt,
crowding there, then we
dass mit dieser Geste das
had not
Sozialwerk
imagined
Petite
that
Flamme
this gesture
entstand.
would help create the
Es wuchs
social
und wuchs,
initiative Petite Flamme,
einfach
which
nur, weil
grew
niemand das Herz hatte,
ever more so, because
einem
nobody
Kind
could
Nein
actually
zu sagen, was nach Nahrung
have it in
und Bildung
himself to refuse
verlangte.
food and education to a child
Ich denke,
asking
mit
for
diesen
it.
Augen haben
And I
Sie,
think
verehrter Herr
it
Professor
is
Berger und
in
Ihre
this
Mitarbeiter,
mindset that you,
in
Professor
diesen
Berger, and your
unermesslichen Weiten
team
dieses Landes diese kleine Flamme gesehen
saw that
und ihm
small
diesen kostbaren
flame
Preis
in the
verliehen.
wide territory of this country
Sehr
and
genau
conferring
von
this
uns allen zu
precious
sagen, dass wir
prize
wirklich
to us.
überwältigt
And
sind
I
vor
can
Dankbarkeit.
truly tell you that we are
Und
overwhelmed by gratitude and
Mein Dank
surprise.
geht aber auch
But
an
my
alle Freunde
thanks
im
is to be
Kongo,
extended to all our
die dieses
friends
Projekt
in the
von Anfang
Congo
an
who
mit
have
Intelligenz,
supported this project from the very
Kreativität
beginning with
und
their
großer
intelligence, creativity,
Professionalität
and a great deal of
vorangetragen haben.
professional attitude towards their
Mein
work.
Dank gilt auch den
My
Kindern,
thanks also goes out to
die
the
sich den
children
täglichen
who
Herausforderungen
live up
ihrer
to the
schweren
daily
Wege stellen
challenges of their difficult
lernen,
lives and
mit
who
Würde
learn
zu
to
leben.
lead a life in dignity.
Mein Dank gilt auch den
I would
vielen
also
Partnern,
like to thank the
Freunden,
many
Sponsoren,
sponsors,
die Petite
friends,
Flamme helfen, zu
mentors that
überleben
help Petite
und zu
Flamme
wachsen.
to survive and to grow. Thank you so much.
Ohne Bildung gibt es keinen Frieden.
Without education, there is no such thing as peace.
Zu
In
Beginn der
2006,
europäischen Militärmission
at the beginning of the
RD
European
Kongo,
military mission RD
suchte ich
Congo,
als deutscher
I
Kontingentführer in
was the
Kinshasa
German leader of the
ein
contingent in
Projekt, bei dem sich
Kinshasa,
die
and I was
deutschen
looking for a
Soldaten
project to
sozial
which German soldiers
einsatzbegleitend
could
engagieren
commit in social terms, and the German ambassador gave me the hint to look at Petite Flamme, to address Petite Flamme, to go and see for myself what this project was all about. And I have to tell you that right from the beginning we were filled with enthusiasm. So besides our military mission, it was all about committing ourselves to education and healthcare provided to children coming from the poorest conditions, from the slums of this mega city, for children who would never have stood the chance to go to school, investing into this Congolese project of providing help to people to help themselves. This was what it was all about. Amongst others, during our deployment, we helped to find mentors for 46 children with the help of our soldiers. And at the end of the mission, my dear wife, who had visited us on the ground in Kinshasa, raised the question, well, what next? And very soon, we thought it was plain for us to look out for other fellow citizens over here in Germany who showed a willingness to support these children. And over the course of the past 9 years, we have established a network of more than 300 sponsors and mentors over here in Germany. A network that we supply with information on the round about 400 children and with whom we keep up this project, and by way of establishing daily contacts with the persons responsible on the ground and by way of visiting the Democratic Republic of the Congo every year, we are aware that our support actually reaches those in need. Every cent of our support, that is. Our reports given to mentors and sponsors in Germany are authentic. With the award conferred today, we honor the work of the persons on the ground, in particular, that dedicate their lives to providing opportunities to the children coming from the slums to be able to manage their lives in a dignified way by way of being granted education and to shape their own future in their own country, and providing them with prospects for the future. It is this recognition for our friends which is a great source of pleasure to us. So I'd like to thank you on behalf of my beloved wife, who does the lion's share of the work over here in Germany, and on behalf of all the partners and sponsors over here in Germany. Let me thank you for this extraordinary award that we are bestowed upon tonight. Great big thanks to you.
Congratulations to you all. Come please here. Meine drei Herren, wenn ich Sie noch einmal kurz auf die Bühne bitten darf.
Please come up on stage once again. We have come to the end of this award ceremony.
Kommen Sie nach vorne.
Please move
mit den hohen Herren
so that you can actually stand side by
Meine sehr verehrten Damen und Herren, das war der Roland Berger Preis für Menschenwürde 2014-2015. Congratulations to you all and thank you very much from the bottom of our hearts. Meine sehr verehrten Damen und Herren, ich könnte mir vorstellen, dieser Abend hat Sie sehr berührt und vielleicht hat Sie auch ein wenig verändert. Danke Ihnen fürs Kommen. Danke für Ihre Aufmerksamkeit.
Thank you very much for joining us. Thank you so much for your attention.